Afternoon and welcome to today's Way Forward workshop, Leader Lunch Break, when we are thrilled to welcome Sam Malone to our conversation. Sam has spent her entire career enhancing the urban communities of Cleveland. From her days as an urban planning intern at Burton Belcar to a public service fellow at the Cleveland Foundation working in the Midtown neighborhood, and then ultimately to a permanent role driving neighborhood planning in Midtown, her waking hours were spent identifying opportunities to improve neighborhoods and the lives of their residents. Then came the opportunity to lead an effort that she knew could be truly transformative as the first executive director with the Cleveland Tree Coalition. The Tree Coalition is a huge collaborative of public, private, and community stakeholders, all partnered with the city of Cleveland to create a healthy, a vibrant, a sustainable, and most importantly, an equitable urban forest. For Sam, it is far more than beautification. It is all about racial and environmental restorative justice and holistic community development. Her goals, like Sam herself, are ambitious to increase the tree canopy from 18 to 30%. This love of trees came from her mother, as well as Sam's own experiences growing up in the city of Cleveland, where a passion to heal the city became embedded. She wanted, even as a child, to bring shade and peace and to reforest an urban landscape that was once known as the Forest City. Recognized by Cranes as one of 20 in their 20s in our community, we are thrilled to welcome Sam Malone.
Marianne, thank you so much for that lovely, very, very beautiful introduction. I feel like I should take you around with me. That was a beautiful introduction. And also, thank you so much, everyone who is attending this afternoon. I am extremely grateful to be able to present the work of the coalition to you all this afternoon. And I know that we are pretty quick on time, so I will definitely keep things concise, as I can be very loquacious because I'm very excited about the work. So first and foremost, as shared, my name is Samira Malone, but everyone calls me Sam Malone, my cheers. I have the great fortune of serving as the executive director of the Cleveland Tree Coalition. I also serve as chairwoman for the Urban Forestry Commission of the city of Cleveland. I'm a lifelong Cleveland resident, grew up on the east side. In the central neighborhood, I now live in the St. Clair Superior neighborhood. I always joke and say I'm the mayor of 55th because I've lived on every end. And I just prepared a quick slide deck to kind of give you guys some context to the work, and then I'm really looking forward to diving into discussion. So let me go ahead and share that now. All right, can everybody see my screen? Perfect. All right. So there are many folks in the room who may be familiar with the Cleveland Tree Coalition. There are many folks who may not be. So just to give a little bit of overview, the CTC is an organization comprised of 50+ member orgs that have the vested interest and commitment in increasing Cleveland's tree canopy by way of the Cleveland Tree Plan, which I'll get a little bit more into that further along in the slide deck. The role of the CTC really is to serve as a mass driver of funding and investment here in the city of Cleveland to reforest our forest city, to increase our urban tree canopy. So we have a very robust goal of raising over $100 million to support those efforts over the next 10 years. We also serve as a gap filler, really identifying the landscape of urban reforestation, as well as overall environment and sustainability, built environment work, really seeing how we as a partner can help to fill some of these spaces and help to bridge some of the barriers to reaching that robust canopy goal. We also serve as a significant organizer and convener, not only for the city of Cleveland, but the Cleveland Tree Coalition itself has proven itself to be a national model. What does it look like when you have for-profit, nonprofit, and community-based organizations really leading the charge and driving forth these reforestation efforts? And one of the things that I'm most proud about and most passionate about is the role that we play in shifting public sentiment around the importance and value of trees. I always say that trees are a critical piece of infrastructure that should be invested so in such, because they have an immense amount of direct and co-benefits that our residents and our environment get to benefit from on a daily basis. So just to give a little bit of context as to how our organization is structured, we're not a traditional nonprofit in the sense we have a fiscal agent. We are housed within the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and we have an executive committee that's comprised of these really critical partners in this urban reforestation work that really help to drive the implementation of our strategic plan and the Cleveland Tree Plan forward. And so getting a little bit back to our member base, as I mentioned, we are home to 50+ member organizations in which we convene quarterly to make sure that we are constantly sharing across platforms. We're sharing resources. We truly are able to accomplish the work, the volume of work that we're able to accomplish by our member organizations who are charged and committed daily to making sure that all Cleveland residents have an equitable access to the healthiest and thriving tree canopy. We also serve in ways of support through our workshop series and different education vehicles. So over the last year, we facilitated several workshops helping to create a framework for how neighborhoods themselves can create their own neighborhood-based tree planting and preservation projects. As mentioned during the introduction, my background is in community development. I am an urban planner through and through. But what was really interesting coming into this role is being able to bring that neighborhood-based knowledge and knowing that many of our neighborhoods, especially the ones that have the most desperately low canopy, also are the ones that don't necessarily have the capacity to do the work or have not had an introduction to the work. So we spent a lot of time over the last year really engaging those partners and bringing them on board. So as I said, I know that there are plenty of fellow tree huggers on the call, but I know that there are also folks who may not understand the direct benefit of trees. So I wanted to give a little bit of context as to why trees. First and foremost, we know that trees have immense environmental benefits. They store and sequester carbon. Something that is extremely salient here in Northeast Ohio is reducing urban heat island impacts. If anybody has been paying attention to climate change and the impacts of climate change, I think this past summer was a significant eye-opener for people across the country and across the world as to what the impacts of climate change feels like in urban settings. They also promote water quality and storm water management. These are just a few to name. They have immense social and public health benefits, thinking about having access to green spaces and other pieces of green infrastructure like trees is absolutely an equity piece. And we'll talk a little bit about that further on in the slide deck. They provide oxygen. They have immense impacts on our physical, mental, and spiritual health, because I always say that humans and the natural environment have a symbiotic relationship and they should not be divorced from one another, even in the urban context. And I also like to elevate the importance of trees from an economic benefit. When we think about trees, and like I said earlier, them being a critical piece of infrastructure, they have an immense return on investment. I always say they're one of the few pieces of municipal infrastructure that do not decline in value as they grow in age. They only increase their value as they grow over time and grow larger in their canopy. So they have immense return on investment. They have direct implication on property values, both commercial and residential. You think about a city like Cleveland, where many neighborhoods are dealing with food apartheid. They also promote food sustainability. I know many of us are used to seeing fruit-bearing trees, which have declined in the last few years. But I grew up always seeing fruit-bearing trees. I grew up with a pear tree in my grandmother's backyard. So all those things have direct implications on our quality of life. I always say that this isn't just environmental work. This isn't siloed in just trees. This is creating a toolkit of wellness for our residents who deserve this, who deserve to have the highest quality of life. So to give context as to how we got there, and then we'll move into where we're going next. So the city of Cleveland has currently an 18% canopy. So looking at any type of urban setting, typically the barometer for a healthy tree canopy is 30% or higher. So overall, Cuyahoga County has a 35% canopy. So you see in the city of Cleveland, we have a stark disparity in comparison to some of the inner and outer ring municipalities throughout the county. So part of the work that we're doing is not only just increasing canopy, but really getting us back to a place where we have a healthy and thriving canopy. By national standards, Cleveland has one of the lowest tree canopies across the country. So in 2015, we released the Cleveland Tree Plan. The Cleveland Tree Plan is pretty much our North Star on how we're guiding our reforestation activities here in the city of Cleveland. So the first plan was released in 2015. Then in 2019, we did an update to the plan and we took a closer look at neighborhood data. As many of you know, Cleveland has 34 very unique neighborhoods, but one of the things that we saw when taking a look at the data, we took a look at population density, we looked at percentage of color, we looked at elderly population, we also looked at other health impacts such as cardiovascular and percentages of asthma, and then we compared that up against the actual tree canopy data to identify high priority neighborhoods in 2017. And of course, unfortunately, the neighborhoods that were most impacted by canopy decline were also Black and Brown neighborhoods, primarily concentrated between the East Side and some West Side neighborhoods. So we knew that in order to move forward with this work, it's not just about haphazardly increasing canopy, it's really about rectifying with the history of disinvestment, racial restorative justice, and practices and policies of discrimination that have marred our communities in ways that many folks didn't even realize. I know that it's very easy when we're looking at health data, or when we're looking at economics, where we're looking at investment in those realms, but it has the history and legacy of redlining has really impacted all facets of our life. And that brings me to this slide. I know that many of you all are familiar with the history, but I always like to contextualize it. If you look back, if you can reference back to the visual I just shared a few slides back, the tree canopy map in comparison to Cleveland and the rest of Cuyahoga County, and you look at that in comparison to any type of redlining map for the city of Cleveland, it's a direct overlay. And it goes to show you that the disinvestment that has happened over the last several decades has not just been, has had direct implications on our green infrastructure, on our built environment, on our economic vitality and community. So really just reinforcing how important it is for us to have a through line of equity and restorative justice in our practice. And especially here in this environmental work, where oftentimes communities of color are totally decentered from the conversation, totally decentered from the investment and prioritization. So that is a steadfast goal of ours, to make sure that we are equitably and responsibly increasing canopy in neighborhoods that have been historically disinvested in. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here, because when you think about the forest city, the city of Cleveland has had that moniker since, I think the first time it was mentioned on record was in the late 1800s. We actually had a mayor by the name of W.M. Mason, who was a horticulturalist. And so from Cleveland's inception, there's always been a prioritization around having a healthy and robust canopy in the public right-of-way. But of course, due to several circumstances and history and policy, we have resulted in the outcomes of what we have today in our canopy. And of course, many of you are familiar with the emerald ash borer, which marred many cities across the country, and a significant loss in canopy. We've learned a lot in the arboriculture field from that case study. We also have experienced immense environmental degradation, economic destabilization of cities. You think of a city like Cleveland that once upon a time was home to 1 million residents and had the infrastructure to accommodate that, now has a fraction of that population, the implications that has on our tax base, development pressures, and not having the proper legislation and codified ordinance to really protect our green assets. And then again, systemic disinvestment and structural racism and the implications that has had on our communities historically through this work with green infrastructure. So moving forward to the future and where we're going in the work of the coalition. So one of the things that I'm really, really proud about our organization, and just to back up a little bit, the coalition has been in inception since 2015, but I started as its first full-time director about 1.5 years ago. So there's been immense growth even over the last decade in advancing this work. Back in 2015, the organization began distributing and planting trees around the neighborhoods. But in 2021, we actually received resources. We received our first grant from NOPEC to begin our re-granting program. So one of the things that we get a chance to do is not only just be a driver of reforestation activities here in the city of Cleveland, but we are able to provide direct support and resources to our member organizations. Every August, we release our grant program, in which Organizations, nonprofit, and public entities are able to apply to up to $75,000 to support their tree planting and establishment projects. And the reason why we say tree planting and establishment is that it's not just about planting a tree. It's really about establishing it to maturity so that it can grow to full maturation and we can receive all of the canopy benefits that that tree provides. And so the first year we released the grant, we had quite a few applicants. It actually released very similar to the Healthy Urban Tree Canopy grant that Cuyahoga County does. Many of you might be familiar with that grant. We work very closely with them and complement to make sure that we can support these neighborhood-based organizations. In our first iteration, we were able to award out about over $300,000. We then had a second grant process in August of 22, and we're able to award out some additional funds. But what I'm most proud of is this year, because of the deep engagement that we've been doing over the last year, facilitating workshops, really going out into the community, meeting with partners, seeing what their pain points are, seeing what the challenges are, seeing how we can actually be a partner and a bridge. We have doubled our application. We doubled our applications this year, receiving a whopping almost $700,000 in requests for tree planting projects. We were able to award out $535,000 to support those projects, but it really speaks to the level of investment and buy-in that we're seeing from the community. People see this as a critical need to increase canopy for their residents in their communities. And we work with partners of all size. And we're really, really proud for our grant program. We're really proud to be able to continue to provide these resources, and we'll be able to continue to do so for the years to come. One of the other things that the CTC involves itself very heavily in is really shifting, like I said, raising public awareness around the work of the coalition, around the benefits and values of making investment and having policy and protections around our tree canopy. We do so internally and externally. So we have a quarterly newsletter that we share out to our CTC members to provide all of the resources, information. We highlight projects, anything that's forestry related here in the city of Cleveland, we share with our coalition members. We're also in the process of getting ready to kick off our first ever education campaign. Again, one of the what I think is one of the most significant opportunities for us in this work is really shifting the tides around education on the importance and value of trees. I can sit and talk to you all day on my grandstand as a tree hugger about why they are so important. But if you don't feel that that is salient to your survivability, to your sustainability of self, then to your home, and then to your community, then it's lost. So we understand how important it is for there to be relevant, hyperlocal information and education around the importance and value of trees. So we plan on kicking that off in January, in which we are also prioritizing working with a consultant of color, priority BIPOC consultant, to help us develop that campaign and all of the materials that will come out of that. We're going to be prioritizing working with the 3 lowest tree canopy neighborhoods here in the city of Cleveland. So I'll be really excited to share more information about that process as we get closer to it. We also are in, again, like I said, this is my first year and a half in the role, so we've had a lot of firsts. We also facilitated our first strategic planning process during this year. We're actually wrapping the bow on that right now. We kicked off our strategic plan in February of 2023. We've had the opportunity of working with a really great local consultant, which I really think reinvigorated not only our coalition members, but also we did a deep engagement process with Cleveland residents. We very intentionally worked on every side of Cleveland that we possibly could, east side, west side, southeast side, to make sure that we got feedback and buy-in from those residents who are also going to help us advance and implement the strategic plan. And so we were able to do that successfully. We are finishing and wrapping the bow on that right now. And we will be adopting and implementing our strategic plan by the end of the month, actually. So I wanted to just kind of leave us with some conclusionary things around what are some priority focuses of the coalition. We've had a really successful year of growing the organization, of growing both our operations as well as our programmatic support for our partners. So of course, we're working steadfast on implementing the strategic plan. Out of the strategic plan, we actually developed working committees that are based around our strategic pillars to help advance the work, because I am currently a team of one full-time, so leaning very heavily on and working with our coalition members to help advance projects and programs. We're also continuing fundraising for our operations and implementation. We're working to continue to award our CTC grants for tree planting and establishment. We're kicking off our community outreach campaign. Also constantly working to deepen our relationship with critical mass partners. When we released our Cleveland Tree Plan update in 2019, one of the largest opportunities to grow urban tree canopy is actually on private property. So we work very closely with those critical mass partners like Cleveland Clinic and Metro Health, looking to even fortify our relationship deeper with CMSD, both as a large landowner and one of the largest drivers of education here in the city. We plan on continuing our workshop series, which will kick back off again in 2024. And of course, through my hat as chairwoman of the Urban Forestry Commission, which was reenacted in January of this year, continuing to push forward and provide an advisory role to the Mayor Bibb administration and City Council on protections and provisions for our tree canopy from the public standpoint. So, as I said, I am extremely passionate and grateful to be able to do this work alongside a phenomenal group of coalition members. We have organizations that are really, really invested and committed to advancing the work. And I believe wholeheartedly that all Cleveland residents deserve access to the highest quality of life. And I think that a healthy, thriving urban tree canopy definitely falls within that toolkit of making sure that we are a climate resilient city and that we are providing our residents the highest quality of life that they deserve. Thank you so much.
Sam, thank you. It is incredibly impressive the amount of work you have established over the last year and a half as a team of one, and want to learn a little bit more about some of that work you have done. So working with such a massive collaborative effort can often be really daunting. How have you navigated to align the partners to address the immediate needs you're seeing in the community?
Absolutely. So one of the ways that we're able to really align the partners is we host quarterly member meetings in which we have a really, really great turnout. One of the things I will definitely say that we haven't had a challenge is our existing members, getting them to show up. They show up and they let us know the work that they're doing. And we're constantly keeping kind of tabs and track on that. So when there are opportunities for value alignment or project and program alignment, that if we can't directly meet that need, then we are very aware of it and are kind of helping to outfit a way to meet that need. So I definitely, of course, is no small feat managing a coalition of 50 plus member organizations, but I will definitely say the partners that we do have that are involved in the work are extremely committed and transparent. I think one of the things that coming into this role that I wanted to make sure that we did not perpetuate was any type of siloed work. Like I did a lot in the very early, the first year of managing the coalition, just deep relationship building and being very honest with our coalition members, being very transparent and building a trustful relationship. And also understanding that trust is not linear and that it takes time. In order to do this type of work, it takes time. Trees are a long game. And really making sure that people understand that we are a partner to them in every sense of the word. So really making sure that those trust and relationship building elements are continued to be prioritized. I think that's the biggest thing with the coalition.
Do you know how much of our tree canopy was reduced because of removals due to the emerald ash borer?
So I don't know the exact percentage of our tree canopy, but I can tell you that on average, we're losing anywhere between 75 to 90 acres of canopy on an annual basis.
And what does the coalition do to ensure the survival of the trees that are planted?
So for our specific grant program, we have provisions put in place that if you receive grant funding from us, you have to also have a maintenance plan that you demonstrate in the grant application process. So going back to what I said, it's not just about planting trees, it's about establishing trees. So the resources that we provide is not only just for the procurement of the trees themselves, but we also provide resources to hire contractors to go out and do the watering, to pay for the mulching, to pay for that young tree training, really making sure that we're supporting the whole life of that tree through our grant programs to the best of our ability. And I think what's very unique about our grant program, aside from Cuyahoga County, which has a wonderful program and they're a wonderful partner in helping to advance the work, we're able to be a little bit more flexible around providing that 3 years of establishment. Usually we say 3 years because that's what it takes to establish a young tree. And then after that, it transitions into young tree training. And then we'll go into its more formal pruning cycle. But really that the first 3 years of establishment are critical. So we support that.
Talk more about the funding structure for the coalition as well as the funding for the grants that you give out?
Absolutely. So we have, of course, our core operations funding structure. We have had the pleasure to be supported in our first year by the Cleveland Foundation, who provided that core funding for us, for them to hire a full-time director and for us to also do our first strategic plan. And then in terms of our programmatic funding, we have a mixture of public and philanthropic funding. So we have a $1.5 million earmark from Senator Sherrod Brown that helps to support our regranting activities. We also have a grant from the NOPEC Energized Community Grants Program, which also helps to fund our program. And then we have a third grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources that helps to fund some of our special tree planting projects. So those are our primary resources on how we're able to upkeep and maintain our regranting program.
And what would you say is your biggest challenge that you are facing in this work?
I would say I can give you two of the biggest challenges. I will say that one, fortunately enough, we're seeing a significant investment in urban forestry from the federal government on down. So in previous years where we saw resources or investment be very scarce, we're seeing a significant flush in that. What I will definitely say is here in the city of Cleveland, we have a unique challenge in the fact that in the right of way, we don't necessarily always have the proper infrastructure to accommodate growing tree canopy. I grew up in a neighborhood myself where tree canopy was few and far in between, not just because trees were dying or because they were being removed, but because the way that the built infrastructure has been constructed doesn't necessarily always leave room for canopy growth. So I think that that's a significant challenge, but I also see that as an opportunity and a vehicle for us to increase canopy. Now, I work very closely, again, in my role as chairperson for the city of Cleveland, but work very closely with Phil Kidd, who recently became the Complete and Green Streets coordinator over at the city of Cleveland, who is also a very advocate and passionate tree steward. There are a lot of passionate advocate tree stewards inside of the city of Cleveland who I think are extremely passionate about using some of our newer codified legislation and codified ordinance to see more opportunities for tree canopy growth in the right of way. But as of right now, it has been a challenge. I will definitely say the education piece, and not because people don't like trees. I think it's because there is an interesting relationship to trees and maintenance. When people are seeing trees that are coming down or are not maintained either on private property or in the public sphere, it begins to shift their perception of trees, right? And especially you think about communities that have had to deal with decades of disinvestment. Sometimes there can be pushback to, oh, I don't want more trees, right? Because the ones that are in my neighborhood are not being stewarded the way that they should. And I think that part of that is rebuilding trust through the work that we're doing, through the physical implementation work that we're doing, while also simultaneously using education as a vehicle for advocacy and trust building.
We have time for one last question. For those of us on the call, how can we best support your work and get involved?
I will say, if there's one of the things I always say, whenever there's an opportunity to plant or steward or care for a tree, please do so, whether it be on your private property, whether it be in various volunteering opportunities, and we have plenty of those. I'd be more than happy to share with folks as a follow-up. And I will say, the power of knowledge and sharing with your peers the importance and benefits of trees. I can't tell you how many people I have random conversations with in the grocery store, taking a walk. No matter where I am, I'm always expressing the value of making this investment, not only in trees, but all green infrastructure. We do not want to live in a world where we are divorced from nature and we are divorced from the ecosystem in which we are supposed to be surviving and thriving in. So I will definitely say, as you all are learning more things around the benefits of trees, around the benefits of parks and green space, share that with your loved ones, because a lot of times people are more receptive to information that is coming from people that they care about.
Sam, thank you so very much. This was enlightening, and your passion comes through as you talk about your work. I think whenever any of us walk down the street and look up and see a tree canopy, we're going to think of you and know that you had a hand in it. So thank you for all that you are doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you all do in your individual roles, both as professionals and people. You are very appreciated. I appreciate you all for taking the time to talk about trees with me this afternoon. I'm also extremely accessible. So if you ever want to follow up, sit down and have a chat or coffee, please feel free to reach out.